Robert Clark is one of the most accomplished photographers of his generation, with a career that bridges photojournalism, science, and visual storytelling. He first gained national attention documenting high school football for the best-selling book Friday Night Lights. Clark shot for Time, Vanity Fair, Texas Monthly, and became a long-time contributor to National Geographic, producing over 40 stories, including 10 covers. His 2003 National Geographic cover story, Was Darwin Wrong?, won the National Press Photographer Association's Picture of the Year. On September the 11th in 2001, Clark captured the exact moment the second plane hit the World Trade Center, images that earned him a World Press Photo Award for Spot News. He has also published several books, including Image America, the first book shot entirely on a cell phone. In this episode of the Crit House, myFIVE series, Robert Clark shares 5 images that have shaped his creative journey, from William Albert Allard, Richard Avedon, Dave LeBelle, Chris Johns, and Alessandra Sanguinetti. Well, Robert Clark, it is a pleasure to have you on the Crit House. We thank you for joining us.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah, it should be a fun conversation. I'm looking forward to the 5 images that you have sent along. Maybe we can start out by telling us, like, who are you? You know, what kind of photographer are you, and tell our viewers about Robert Clark.
Well, I started out as a newspaper photographer. I started out when I was young, 16, shooting sports for a local newspaper. And I became pretty obsessed with photography. I was a dyslexic student. I was not a good student. You know, I was an okay athlete, but I knew I was a runner, and I knew I wasn't going to be Jim Ryan. I remember seeing a book, The Jim Ryan Story, and it had photographs in it by Rich Clarkson, who was actually the director of photography at the Topeka Capital Journal, and worked a lot for Sports Illustrated. And I thought, wow, you know, if somebody can work for Sports Illustrated out of Topeka, Kansas, then, you know, this is something I'm really interested in. So I got very focused on it, and started buying equipment, and I was able to do some work at the local newspaper. And
which was where, by the way? Where was the?
It's in Hays, Kansas, Western Kansas.
All right.
And it was actually funny. There's a really excellent AP photographer, Charlie Riedel, who you should talk to him. He's wonderful. But we were on the same high school photo staff, and he just did some amazing pictures at the Olympics. But we were kind of frenemies in high school, very competitive with each other. You know, I went from Western Kansas. I went to Kansas State University, which had a very good newspaper.
Yeah.
Student newspaper. There was no photography classes there, but it had very good student newspaper. And Pete Souza worked there. He was older than me. A guy named Bo Rader, years before Jim Richardson had worked there, a big geographic photographer.
Yep.
And so there was this culture of the photography department at this student newspaper having a lot of, not control, but a lot of impact on the product. And we were also very lucky because we were close to Topeka, where that newspaper in Topeka was. And there's a guy named Brian Lanker who worked there, who won a Pulitzer and went off to Eugene, Oregon, and was the director of photography in Eugene, Oregon, and photographed a book called I Dream a World, Black Women That Have Changed America, which is a massive, it's in its like 38th printing.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah.
It's crazy. But also Chris Johns, who became a geographic photographer, and Sarah Lean, who became the director of photography at Geographic. So we were around this. You're seeing other people succeed, so you're kind of visualizing that you're going to be able to have some opportunity. And I think that's the thing that opened my head up to I could do a lot of different things. You know, I went to Philadelphia Inquirer out of college, and I got an internship there, and I was there as a freelancer for them after my internship for about 3 years. And then I had the opportunity to do pictures for a book called Friday Night Lights about high school football in Texas.
I've heard of it.
So I walked up to Buzz Bissinger, the the night he had won a Pulitzer, and I said, "Hey, I heard you got a book on football." And I just talked to him for like 2 minutes. I had been to West Texas to that high school stadium on a summer photo internship. And so he called me 3 months later and said, "Hey, you want to come down?" So,
Wow.
yeah, and it's one of those things. It's like I was switching newspapers. I was going to a newspaper in the Midwest, and I actually called them and said, "Look, I can't come for another 3 weeks. I'm sorry. I hope that's not too bad." But it's one of those things I almost didn't take, and it's very much defined and helped my career, and it's some of the work I'm most proud of. So Friday Night Lights runs. I get, I think, 18 pictures in black and white in Sports Illustrated and cover, and so it's like, wow, maybe I can freelance.
Well, tell us a little bit about so this process of deciding on 5 images. It's everybody kind of comes about it in a different way, and you've taken an approach that I like. Why don't you tell us about what you thought about as you're coming up with your 5 images?
It's I didn't just choose 5 images I love or I wish I had shot or something, but they're kind of images that along the way really informed what I was shooting at that time and why I was shooting stuff that way. The first picture by William Albert Allard is one of my favorite pictures to this day. And I was actually at the eye doctor's office. We didn't take National Geographic, and I was at the eye doctor's office and I was looking through it and I saw this and I stole the magazine. So it's just so poetic. It's just such an amazing image. The flag has 48 stars on it. So it kind of takes it to another time. The quality of light is just hard to beat. I mean, Allard was shooting a lot of like 25 and 64 Kodachrome back in the day, and you can just kind of feel it. He has a book called Vanishing Breed, is a collection of all these different cowboy stories that he did, and the work is just mind blowing to me because it's little moments and it's this Kodachrome palette. To me, that's an epitome of a portrait. I mean, you might understand who this guy is a little bit just by the surroundings and the way it was shot. So,
Yeah, I mean, so this is one of those images on this program that has been featured several times. So
yeah, I think Sousa had it on his list, and I thought
yes.
that was pretty funny because Pete and I never really worked together, but he was a very big presence in my university, and he would come back and was having a very successful career at the Chicago Tribune and then the White House and stuff. So he was always kind of this like success story. And yeah, I'd be interested to see what he said about this image. It's perfect, and there aren't that many perfect pictures, I don't think.
Now, Dave LeBelle, why don't you tell us about this image? It makes me laugh.
Dave was a photographer at a very small newspaper called the Schnute Daily Tribune, and he left and went to some other newspapers and ended up teaching at Western Kentucky for years. And there's a lot of really excellent photographers who came out of Western Kentucky. Several of them won the College Photographer of the Year and got internships at Geographic, and people have gone on and had great careers who were under him. But Dave's like a kind of a big, tall, like 6'4", kind of a very friendly, outgoing guy. And this picture is just as a feature picture, it's perfect. I just love this picture. I have my wife bought me a big print of it, so I have a very large print of it, and I just constantly find myself kind of looking at the picture, the clothing, the flag in the background, the guy in mid-stride in the background. It's just, there's a moment here in the sense of, not just in the sense of Cartier-Bresson, the decisive moment, but in the sense of it being a document of mid-70s Kansas. And now that's a long time ago. And that's when I started shooting pictures around 1977, which is when this picture was taken about that time. So I just love it. I just think it's wonderful.
And Dave.
Yeah. We've met in person only once, but we've been in touch over Facebook and Instagram and things like that pretty often. And I think he reached out to me. I can't remember how I met him, but he reached out to me because I did another interview and I was talking about him, and he's like, I didn't know who you were. So, because I was after him, and then I moved to the East Coast, and he was mostly in Kentucky and the Midwest.
Chris Johns with your third image.
Again, like a huge influence in early. Chris went on and won college, or he won, he won College Photographer of the Year. He had interned in Topeka, Kansas for Clarkson, and Jim Richardson, a big National Geographic great photographer, was on staff there, and Dave Peterson was there, who went on and won a Pulitzer in Iowa. And Clarkson had this philosophy of, out of the dark room and into the newsroom. And not only were the photographers who worked there good photographers, they were really smart people who would, created the journalism for the Midwestern part of the country in a lot of ways. And they also developed an expectation about how photographers should take their job. The old TV show, Lou Grant had the photographer Animal. It was a whole different approach. It was, often suit and tie and, just to be taken seriously. And I learned a lot from the photographers there. I was able to see the newspaper every day while I was in college, high school and college. And, I think I said earlier, Sarah Lean and Chris Johns and Jim Richardson and Dave Peterson. I mean, the list of people that went through there is just extraordinary. But Chris shot this. It was a blacksmith called Dirty Ernie. These were the kind of pictures, in a way, it's a little bit like the picture from Allard. It's a kind of solitary old guy. And I just think that there's a moment here. There's incredible composition here. I'm constantly pestering Chris about getting a print. And because I love this picture. And, the composition is extraordinary, I think. And it's just, I still have the newspaper that this ran in. And this was 1979.
That's got to be some withered newsprint.
It's pretty yellow. It's pretty yellow. But I know I have it someplace. But yeah, and I kept it just because it was so impactful to me. He's gone on and had this amazing career and was a great editor at Geographic. And I ended up doing probably 10 or 15 assignments when he was editor. So he was always very good to me. I just love the composition. And
yeah, textures are great, composed well. So
Yeah.
Mr. Johns, if you're watching, give this man a print.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so we move on to the great Richard Avedon. Tell us about this.
When I was interning at the Philadelphia Inquirer, I was down in DC seeing my sister, and was driving past a Corcoran, and it said Richard Avedon's in the American West, and it was like 8:58, and it opened at 9. So I just pulled the car over, and my sister and I went upstairs. The opening had been the night before, and there was no one there.
Oh wow!
No one there.
Everybody was hungover.
Except for Avedon was sitting at a table signing books.
No.
Yeah. So I went over and bought a book, bought a poster, and you're a photographer. I had a Nikon FM with me or something, or an F2 probably. But I said, yeah, I'm working in a newspaper, and we were just talking along, and his desk was right at the wall. And I walked around the wall, and it was like, oh my God, because the prints were like 12 feet. There was nobody else there. So he kind of stuck his head around the corner. And I said, I've never seen prints this big. And he walked around the exhibit with me for a few minutes.
Wow.
And I hung around there for an hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours. And in the back of the book, the Secretary of Agriculture was a guy named Ken Albright, and he was a family friend of ours. So I was able to talk to him about that a little bit. But yeah, it's an amazing collection of pictures. There's a really great book by a woman named Sarah Wilson who ended up doing a lot of the casting and finding these people for Avedon.
Was it Laura Wilson?
Laura Wilson.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry. What did I say? I'm sorry.
Sarah, she's been on the program before.
Oh, Laura's amazing. Her work is
Great.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And that book, The Making of the American West, is as interesting as this work. So I really enjoyed that book. I thought they were incredible companion pieces. So
I actually haven't. She was on the program. Lovely, but I haven't seen that book. I'm gonna have to search that out. That's because this series, not necessarily this image itself, but this series, people bring up here all the time. It has really influenced a lot of photographers and photo people.
It's seminal. I didn't know that much about Avedon, but there's a biography, it's a biography about Diane Arbus, by Sarah Bosworth. I read this biography of her, and she was very good friends with Avedon. So I found that interesting, and then I started to research some things that Avedon did, and he, at her funeral, he said, "I'll never be as an important photographer as her," and which is interesting because he was so financially successful and this and that. But he knew what good pictures were, like really good pictures, not just, there's beautiful, important fashion pictures, but just, not like makeup ads and stuff like that. In the American West is a little bit of a response to Diane Arbus's work. He did it after her death, and he concentrated on, he wanted to find a project, and he was, in the later years of his life when he was working for New Yorker, I think those were the kind of pictures and stories that, he found that really moved him.
I wasn't aware that there was that influence there. There was that line from Diane Arbus to
and a friendship, like a very close friendship. And that book, Diane Arbus by Patricia Bosworth, is it's the best biography I've ever read of anybody. I just think it's so, and I'm very interested in the subject matter, but it's just a beautifully written book.
Well, that's now 2 books that I have to pick up after this conversation. So you've got my summer reading moving along. That's good.
Okay. All right.
So I was interested in this because it feels like it goes in a different direction from Alessandra Sanguinetti. Tell us why this is here for you.
She's been following these sisters forever. She's a Magnum photographer. She came to ICP. I think when she was at ICP, she shot a book on the 6th day. It's about a farm, and it's these really interesting images of a farm in Argentina. She's Argentine in Argentina, and it's really beautiful work. And then this book came out on these sisters, and I just like she's followed them through to their adults, and they have their own children now. So I like the fact that it's this kind of long-term project where she was revisiting it. I think as I get older, I can see the difference between men's pictures and women's pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's just more of a humanity in some of women's work, frankly. And I just love the energy of not just this image, but a lot of the images in this. I'm never really jealous of a picture, or I do sometimes wish I had that assignment or whatever, but mostly it's not that I'm jealous, but what inspires me is the idea. There's another book, I think it's of Jackal and Other Men by Pietro Hugo, and he saw a little article in a magazine about these guys who had a massive jackal, but with things on its mouth and big chain around its neck, and he immediately flew to shoot it. He's based out of South Africa, and it's this collection of pictures of all these different people who kept these, and they were really for people get pictures shot next to them and that. But it's just I love like the same picture over and over and over, and the only thing that changes in it, what changes in it is the people generally, like in the American West. But this work on these sisters is so playful and funny, and they're running around swimming holes, and the girl in the red top has like a fake mustache on at some point, and it's kind of magic realism, to me, and it's so much different than anything I've ever shot. But I admire it, and I long to have that kind of looseness and fluidity in some of my work someday. But yeah, it's a lovely picture.
Well,
And
you
I almost bought a print, I guess 25 years ago or 30 years ago, and I sure wish I had. So
oh, the mistakes of our youth.
yeah.
Robert, just what a pleasure to listen to the influences that have brought you to this point in your career. Thank you for talking about them. It's been great.
No, I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you very much, and thank you all for watching The Crate House.